I didn't argue. I just nodded. I wasn't worried. I had no reason to be. The results that shattered my world. I sat there in that waiting room, staring at the walls, my thoughts spiraling. Then, the doctor returned, holding a clipboard. He looked at me, too carefully. "Your son's genotype is AS." I blinked. That didn't make sense. "That can't be right," I said, shaking my head. "I'm AA. My wife is AA. That means our kids have to be AA too." The doctor's expression didn't change. "We ran the test twice. The result is the same." My chest tightened. No, this has to be a mistake. Check again. And they did. Another vial of blood. Another hour of waiting. Another round of telling myself that this was just a mix-up. The second test came back. Same result. Daniel was AS. My mind raced for explanations, but there was only one possibility, one I refused to accept. The doctor must have seen the look on my face because he spoke again. "Would you like us to test your daughter as well?" I nodded. At that moment, I still believed in Jane. I still thought this had to be some bizarre medical error. Ella's test came back. She was AA. I should have felt relieved, but instead I felt a sinking feeling in my chest. Why was Daniel different? And then a single thought repeated in my mind, one I couldn't silence. Check everything. The death sentence in an envelope. I told the doctor to run a DNA test. I didn't tell Jane. I just sat there, waiting, my hands clammy, my heart pounding. Then finally a nurse walked toward me, holding a sealed envelope. "Here are the results, sir." I tore it open. I unfolded the paper inside. And then, everything stopped. 0% paternity match. I read it again and again. My vision blurred. My pulse roared in my ears. I scanned the paper, searching for a mistake. But there was no mistake. Neither Daniel nor Ella were mine. 12 years. 12 years of lies. I took a breath I didn't even feel. Then, slowly, I reached for my phone. I dialed Jane's number. She answered almost immediately, her voice bright and distracted. "Hey, babe." I kept my voice calm, controlled. "There's been a medical emergency. I'm at the hospital with the kids." There was a sharp inhale on the other end. "What happened? Is it Daniel? What's wrong?" Her words rushed out in panic. "He collapsed. They're running tests, but he's stable now. I'm leaving work now." Her voice wavered. "I'll be there as soon as I can." And that was it. I hung up, because if I had stayed on the line 1 second longer, she would have heard it. The rage, the devastation, the man she had destroyed. And when she arrived, she had no idea what was coming. I sat in the hospital waiting room, staring at the black screen of my phone. Numbness. That was all I felt. She arrived in just under 40 minutes, rushing into the waiting room as if she had run the entire way from the parking lot. Her eyes darted around until they found me. She exhaled, relief washing over her face as she saw Daniel responding to treatment. "What happened? How is he doing?" she asked. "The doctor just released him," I said, my voice calm, detached. "He's stable now. He's fine." Jane's shoulders sagged in relief. She covered her face with her hands for a second, taking in the news before turning to me again. "God, I was so scared," she whispered. "Let's take him home." I nodded. "No." Emotion. No reaction. She had no idea that the man sitting next to her wasn't the same one from that morning. By the time we got home, Daniel had fallen asleep in the back seat, his head resting against Ella's shoulder. Jane was still whispering, prayers under her breath, thanking God that he was okay. I pulled into the driveway, put the car in park, but I didn't move. Jane unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to me. "Are you coming?" I shook my head. "I just need a minute." She hesitated but didn't push. She got out, carefully pulling Daniel into her arms while Ella trailed beside her. I watched them disappear, into the house, the front door clicking shut behind them. And then I lost it. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My chest heaved, and before I could stop myself, the first sob tore through me. Then another. And another. I cried like a man who had just lost everything. Because I had. 12 years of lies. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes. Maybe hours. But when I finally pulled myself together, I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and stepped out of the car. It was time to confront my wife. When I walked into the house, the kids were already asleep. Jane was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she rinsed a plate under the sink. I didn't start with small talk. I placed the envelope on the dining table. "We need to talk." My voice was calmer than I felt. She turned around, wiping her hands on a towel, eyebrows drawn in mild concern. "What is it?" I swallowed hard, staring at her. "I got the kids tested at the hospital," I said. "For their genotype." Her face didn't change. "Okay." Her tone was light, but I noticed how she straightened slightly as if bracing herself. I took a breath. "Daniel is AS." She blinked. "What?" "He's AS, Jane." My voice was steady, but I could hear the strain in it. "That's impossible, right? Since we're both AA?" Her eyes darted to the side for just a second. That doesn't make sense. Maybe there was a mistake." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "That's what I thought too. So I had them run the test again. Same result." She frowned. "I don't understand, Thomas. What are you trying to say?" My pulse rose. "I did a DNA test." My voice was tight. For both of them. Everything stopped. She stood there, frozen, her face unreadable. I reached for the envelope, pulled out the papers, and slammed them on the table. Her body jerked at the sound. Her hands trembled as she picked up the documents. I watched as her eyes moved over the words, her lips parting in a silent gasp. And then she broke. A choked sob escaped her lips. "Thomas, please." Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. I said nothing. I just stared at her. Tears streamed down her face as she reached for me, but I stepped back out of her grasp. "I'm sorry," she whispered, shaking her head rapidly. "I swear, I am so sorry." She sobbed harder, covering her mouth as if that would stop the sound. "I love you, Thomas. I swear I love you." "You don't lie to people you love," I said. "You don't let them live a fantasy while you carry the truth." She kept crying, kept pleading. But I was done. There was nothing she could say to make this better. I turned around, walked past her, and made my way to the guest room, the house that no longer felt like home. The next few days were pure torture. Jane moved carefully around me, her voice soft, her steps hesitant. She tried to act normal, like nothing had changed. But nothing she said or did could fix this. She started cooking my favorite meals: jollof rice, spicy goat stew, grilled fish, seasoned just the way I liked. The house smelled like comfort, like love, but it only made me sick. How do you eat when your stomach is full of betrayal? At night, she would knock on the guest room door. "Thomas," she'd whisper, "please talk to me." But I never answered. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how long she had watched me love those kids, knowing they weren't mine. And then there was the worst part: Daniel and Ella. I still tucked them in at night, still listened to their stories about their day, still kissed their foreheads. They didn't deserve any of this. They were innocent. But every time I looked at them, my heart broke all over again. A week passed. A week of silent meals, forced small talk, fake smiles for the kids. A week of Jane trying, hoping, praying that I would come around. I couldn't. That evening, I sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, staring at my suitcase. I wasn't angry anymore. I stood up, grabbed the suitcase, and started packing. A couple of shirts, a few pairs of jeans, my laptop, my essentials. I wasn't even sure where I was going, I just knew I couldn't stay. Before I walked out, I went to the dining table, pulled out a sheet of paper, and wrote the only thing I could manage. I can't do this. I love the kids, but our entire life was built on a lie. I need to go. I placed the note where she would see it, took one last look around, grabbed my car keys, and walked out. I didn't look back.